We flew to the Maldives to celebrate 30 years of marriage. But by sunset, my wife told me she wanted another man in her bed. She thought I'd break, she had no idea what I'd do next. Hey folks, welcome back and thanks for being here. Today I've got a brand new story to share, so let's dive right in. As the wheels of the airplane kissed the runway in the Maldives, I turned to Karen, gave her hand a gentle squeeze and grinned. 30 years, I said. Can you believe that? She let out a soft laugh, her eyes sparkling in that familiar way. I can, she replied. And I'd do it all over again. We stepped off the plane, and immediately the warm, salty breeze of the islands wrapped around us like an old friend pulling us into an embrace. The resort ahead of us looked like something out of a postcard, endless stretches of soft, white sand and ocean water so blue it almost didn't seem real. The sunlight danced on the waves like it had been waiting just for us. I couldn't imagine a better place to celebrate 30 years of love, commitment, and the life we had built side by side. Just as I was losing myself in that picture-perfect view, I heard a voice call out. Logan. Karen. I turned to see Megan and her husband, Jerry, walking toward us. Megan was an old acquaintance from work, and the surprise on her face mirrored my own. Well, talk about a small world, I said, shaking Jerry's hand. Megan smiled brightly. I know, right? We're here for a little getaway, just needed a change of scenery. Same here, Karen chimed in with a warm smile. We made some small talk, catching up for a few minutes before agreeing we'd find some time to meet up later during the trip. That afternoon slipped by in a haze of happiness, unpacking our bags, settling into the villa, and walking along the shoreline with Karen's hand in mine. Everything felt just right, like the world was giving us this perfect gift to mark our 3 decades together. But as the sun began to sink into the horizon, splashing the sky with streaks of orange and violet, the tone of the day shifted. We sat together on the balcony, a half-empty bottle of wine between us, the sound of waves whispering in the distance. Karen turned toward me, her face unreadable. I need to tell you something, she said. I set my glass down, a strange unease creeping into my chest. What's on your mind? She hesitated, looking down at her hands before letting out a slow breath. I want to sleep with Jerry. For a moment, I just stared at her, certain I must have misheard. At first, I honestly thought I had misheard her. But when I met her gaze, I saw nothing but calm certainty staring back at me. I've been thinking about this for a while, she continued, her tone almost matter-of-fact. Jerry and I, we have a connection. And since we're all here together, I think now is the right time. My stomach knotted, a cold, twisting feeling that made it hard to breathe. You're joking, right? I asked, searching her face for even the slightest sign of humor. She shook her head slowly. No, Logan. I'm completely serious. A dry, bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. You're telling me, on our anniversary trip of all times, that you want to sleep with another man? With Jerry? I don't want to hurt you, she said softly, reaching for my hand. I pulled my hand back like hers was on fire. You don't want to hurt me, Karen? How do you think this feels? I still love you, she replied, her voice gentle but firm, but I need this. Her words hit me harder than the tropical sun ever could. This wasn't some tipsy, heat-of-the-moment confession. This wasn't an impulsive slip-up. She had planned this. You planned this. My voice came out rough, disbelief dripping from every word. She nodded without hesitation. Yes. I talked to Megan about it weeks ago. She's on board. She even said she's always found you attractive, Logan. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to wrap my head around the insanity of what I was hearing. And you honestly thought I'd just go along with this? That I'd jump into bed with Megan while you're with Jerry? Karen exhaled sharply, as if I was the one being unreasonable. It's not just about that, Logan. It's about excitement. About feeling alive again. She leaned in slightly, her voice taking on a softer, almost persuasive tone. Jerry's younger. He's full of energy. I miss how that feels. And I know you've noticed Megan. She's beautiful, younger. This could be a chance for both of us, to have fun, to try something new, without guilt, without secrecy. I shook my head, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. You actually think this would be good for our marriage? Yes, she said, without a shred of doubt in her voice. We've been together for 30 years, Logan. 30, she said, her voice steady, almost like she was giving a speech. We've built a whole life together, raised a daughter, shared everything. But let's be honest with ourselves, the spark, the excitement, the passion, it's not like it used to be. Her words hit me square in the chest like someone had taken a swing at me. This trip, she went on, is about celebrating us. But it's also about reviving us. And this, she gestured vaguely toward the villa next door. This could be exactly what we need. A humorless laugh slipped out as I gripped the balcony railing so tightly my knuckles went pale. By sleeping with other people? Karen gave me a small, almost reassuring smile. It's not about betrayal. It's about exploring, embracing something new. Jerry's younger, Logan, and I want to feel that energy again. And Megan, she wants you. We could do this together. It would be good for both of us. I felt every muscle in my body tense as I looked at the woman I'd spent my life loving. Every word she spoke seemed to cut just a little deeper. If you go through with this, I said, my voice low but steady, our marriage is over. She didn't flinch. She didn't even look upset. She just crossed her arms, tilted her head slightly, and said in a calm, almost casual tone, Logan, I paid for this trip. And I'm going to enjoy it however I please. If you want to sit here and sulk, that's your choice. But I'm not letting you stop me. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat of anger rise in my chest. So that's it? 30 years together, and you treat our anniversary like some kind of free pass to cheat. She let out a slow breath and shook her head. It's not cheating if I'm telling you up front. And let's be clear, if you say no, I'll just have a threesome with them instead. I'm more than fine with that, I told her, though my voice was tight, my stomach twisting into knots. A sick, hollow feeling washed over me. The idea of my wife in another man's arms was already unbearable. But now she was throwing a threesome into the mix, like she was deliberately twisting the knife just to watch me bleed. My jaw locked as a wave of anger surged through me. You know what, Karen? If you've already made up your mind, then I'm done wasting my time trying to save this marriage. I took a long breath, but it didn't steady me. My hands were still trembling from the sheer fury building inside. Go ahead. Do whatever you want. Sleep with Jerry. Have your little threesome. But don't you dare expect me to be here when you're finished. She didn't even flinch. Not a flicker of guilt or hesitation crossed her face. She just looked at me with that same calm, almost smug composure. I shook my head, feeling nothing but disgust. Start looking for a lawyer. Then I walked out. The rest of the day, rage burned under my skin like an open flame. No matter where I went or how hard I tried to distract myself, my mind kept circling back to her words, the casual, unapologetic tone she used to get 30 years of marriage. Every laugh we'd shared, every struggle we'd overcome, every memory we'd built together. All of it felt trampled under her heels, reduced to a mere inconvenience in her hunt for excitement. By the time I came back to the villa, my blood was already boiling. I pushed the door open, clinging to a faint hope, maybe she'd come to her senses. But there she was, standing at the mirror, brushing her hair, adding a fresh coat of lipstick, getting ready for what looked like a romantic date. Only it wasn't with me. She turned to face me, a smug little smile curling on her lips. Last chance, dear. You can either have a young woman in your bed tonight, or you can lie here all alone and dream about me having hot, passionate sex with Jerry and Megan. Her words hung in the air like a challenge, her eyes locked on mine, waiting to see if I'd crack. I took a slow step toward her, a dark, tight smile forming on my face. My voice came out calm, but underneath, it was sharp enough to cut glass. Last chance, Karen. You can either save your marriage right now, or deal with what comes next. And I promise you, when I'm done, there won't be anyone left who can put the pieces back together for you. She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was some petulant child. Don't threaten me, Logan, she said, flicking her hand as if brushing away a fly. You have no right to hold me back. I deserve this. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. 30 years of my life I've given you. 30 years of faithfulness. And for what? She turned back to the mirror, her reflection looking every bit as cold as her voice. Sleeping with you is boring now, she said bluntly. There's no excitement for me anymore. She paused to adjust her earring, then locked eyes with me through the glass. Most of the time. I have to fake it. A slow, cruel smile spread across her lips. So shut up before I humiliate you more. Something inside me snapped in that moment. If she wanted to play dirty, then fine, I could drag us into the same mud she was wallowing in. She had spent the entire evening tearing me down, treating me like I was nothing but an obstacle to her little fantasy. But she'd forgotten one important thing. I wasn't the kind of man who would just stand there and take it. I stepped in closer, my voice dropping to a low, icy whisper. Well, since we're trading truths, let me give you one, darling. I let that last word drip with sarcasm, watching her smugness falter ever so slightly. You complain about me being boring in bed? Here's the reality. I leaned in just enough for my words to cut straight through her composure. You're as dry as a summer well in Texas. Her jaw clenched, but I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Sleeping with you, I said, my tone razor-sharp, feels like a madman trying to end his life with sandpaper. Her nostrils flared. I couldn't help the smirk that tugged at my lips as I leaned in for the next blow. And while we're being brutally honest, I said, my voice low and taunting, let's talk about something you always pretend isn't there. Your unkempt Karen. It's like a wild Himalayan bear crawled between your legs, died there, and now it's slowly decomposing. Her hands balled into fists, her face twisting with pure fury, but I didn't back down. In fact, my smirk only widened. So no, my dear wife, I continued, you're not the only one who's had to fake it. I still tried, God knows I tried, because I loved you. But since you've made it your personal mission to strangle that love and humiliate me, I figure it's only fair I return the favor. Karen glared at me, her whole body shaking with rage. But I wasn't finished. I turned to the nightstand, grabbed my electric trimmer, and tossed it onto the bed beside her. No matter how much you dress yourself up tonight, I know exactly how this little adventure is going to play out, I said. Here, take the trimmer with you. Consider it a gift. Jerry will appreciate the effort. Her breath caught. She exhaled in short, sharp bursts, her nostrils flaring as her hands clenched tight at her sides. And for the first time that night I saw it, the faintest crack in her icy composure. Maybe it was the rotting bear comment. Maybe it was the realization that I wasn't falling apart like she had expected. Either way, I'd finally struck a nerve. But still, she turned back to the mirror, determined to finish whatever show she was putting on. She picked up her perfume bottle and sprayed it liberally, as if drowning herself in expensive fragrance could cover the stench of betrayal. I sat back on the bed, stretching my legs out, the smirk never leaving my face. She thought she still held all the power tonight. What she didn't realize was that she had already burned everything to the ground. Our marriage was a pile of ash, and there she was, standing in the smoke, waiting for me to try to put the fire out. She walked toward the door, the sharp click of her heels echoing across the room, each step dripping with manufactured confidence. But when she reached the threshold, she hesitated. Her head turned just slightly, her eyes flicking toward me. Maybe she was waiting for me to break. Maybe she thought I'd rush over, grab her wrist, beg her not to do this. Instead, I leaned forward, elbows resting on my knees, and let out a low chuckle. You're forgetting the trimmer? I said. Her lips pressed into a tight, thin line. Her eyes darkened with something between frustration and contempt. But she didn't answer. She simply turned back around, stepped through the doorway, and walked away without looking back. I stayed there, staring at the empty frame where she'd just been. I felt something shift deep in my chest, a small crack in my heart widening faster than I wanted to admit. 30 years of marriage. 3 decades of shared struggles, laughter, and love, all wiped away in a matter of minutes. And for what? For a night in bed with a younger man. For some twisted attempt to claw back the thrill of her youth, even if it meant burning everything we had built together to the ground. I let out a long, slow breath, my fingers tightening around my phone as the reality sank in. My marriage was over. There was no coming back from this. But that didn't mean I was going to just sit here and let her walk away without consequences. I opened my contacts and found Beth's name, my daughter. The one person who had always, without question, been in my corner. She picked up on the second ring. Dad? She said, her voice instantly alert. Why are you calling so late? I swallowed hard, forcing my tone to stay level. Beth, I said quietly, your mother has decided to sleep with a younger man tonight. She planned this entire trip for that reason, I told Beth, my voice breaking for just a moment before I forced it back under control. She told me right to my face. I took a breath, steadying myself. So I'm leaving. I'm getting on the next flight home, and I'm abandoning her here. Wait, what? Beth's tone sharpened instantly, disbelief cutting through every word. Dad, slow down. What the hell is going on? I raked a hand through my hair, my jaw tightening until it ached. I just wanted you to know. I hesitated, knowing what I was about to say would only make her worry more. I'm sorry for what I'm going to do next. Dad, what does that mean? What are you talking about? Beth's voice was urgent now, almost panicked. But I didn't answer. Instead, I ended the call before she could press me any further. My heart thudded in my chest as I stared at the phone, the weight of the moment settling over me. Then, with renewed resolve, I dialed the front desk. Hello, Mr. Logan, how can we assist you? The receptionist's voice was warm, professional. I took a deep breath. I need to speak to the local police. Back in the US, 2 women being intimate wouldn't raise so much as an eyebrow. But here, in the Maldives, the rules were different. Sharia law, Section 411A2. Same-sex relations could mean up to 8 years in prison, plus 100 lashes. Karen had made her choice. Now it was my turn to sing her a lullaby. When the police arrived, 2 officers in sharp, pressed uniforms stepped into the hotel lobby. Their faces were calm but watchful. I greeted them with a polite nod and motioned toward the plush seating area. One of them, Officer Rashid, folded his arms. "Sir, we were told you requested urgent assistance. What seems to be the issue?" I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "It's a delicate matter," I began. "My wife, and another woman, are engaging in acts that directly violate Section 411A2 of your laws." I paused, keeping my expression unreadable. "As much as this pains me personally, I respect the legal system of your country. And I believe it's only right that your laws are upheld." Officer Rashid's gaze flicked briefly toward the envelope of cash I had set on the table. He drew in a slow breath. "We will look into this matter," he said at last, his tone careful, deliberate. I leaned back, letting a faint, knowing smile creep onto my face. "That's all I ask, gentlemen. I'm just a man who believes in the rule of law. I've been a salesman my whole career. And tonight I had just sold them the promise of glory." 2 hours later, as I folded the last of my clothes into my suitcase, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unsurprisingly, it was Karen. I let it ring. A minute passed. It rang again. This time there was a certain persistence to it, maybe even desperation. I smirked, shook my head, and kept zipping up my bag. She had made her choice. Now she would have to live with the consequences. Before I left, I scanned the room to make sure I hadn't left anything behind. That's when my eyes landed on Karen's passport, sitting on the nightstand. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands, and then, almost casually, slipped it into my own bag. "Oh dear," I murmured to myself, feigning concern. "How could I be so forgetful?" A quiet chuckle escaped me. With everything in order, I rolled my suitcase down to the reception desk. The man behind the counter looked up and gave me a polite nod. "Checking out, sir?" he asked. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Yes," I said, sliding my credit card across the counter. "I'll settle my part of the bill." Then, with a casual shrug, I added, "My wife still has her belongings in the room, so she'll be handling the rest of the charges." The receptionist hesitated, eyes flicking to the computer screen. "And your wife will be staying longer?" I gave him a tight, polite smile. "Well, that depends on her. But I won't be sticking around to find out." He nodded, processed the payment, and handed me the receipt. "Thank you for staying with us, sir. Have a safe journey." "Oh, I plan to," I replied, taking my suitcase and walking toward the exit. At the airport, I breezed through security, feeling an odd wave of relief wash over me. The last several hours had been nothing short of chaos, but now, sitting at the gate waiting for my flight, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of release. I just settled into my seat when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Dad." I turned, eyebrow raised, and set my suitcase down. "Nice to see you too, sweetheart," I said, feigning innocence. "Don't play dumb, Dad," Beth snapped, stepping closer. "Mom is in jail." The words should have shocked me, but they didn't. Instead, I just exhaled slowly, tilting my head. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Beth's hands clenched into fists. "Mom was caught with Jerry and Megan," she said, her voice almost shaking. "The cops stormed their villa, no knocking, no warning. They just barged in. All 3 of them were arrested and charged." I gestured toward an empty seat. "Sit down." "No," she shot back, her voice sharp. "You need to help." "I'm not going to help," I said firmly. Her eyes widened. "What?" I met her gaze without so much as a flinch. "I'm filing for divorce first thing tomorrow morning." My voice was steady, solid. Beth's face twisted in disbelief. "No, Dad, you can't do that," she shouted. I narrowed my eyes, my tone razor sharp. "Yes, I can. Watch me." She stared at me, breathless, like she was looking at a man she didn't quite recognize. "I just told her, your mom made her bed, Beth. Now she gets to lie in it." Beth swallowed hard, her lips pressing into a thin, tight line. Later, sitting back in my chair at the airport, a man a few seats over glanced at me. "Yeah," I said simply, answering whatever small talk we just exchanged. He let out a low whistle and shook his head. "You're that guy, the husband of the woman all over the news." I frowned slightly, feigning ignorance. "She's on the news? You haven't seen it?" he asked, almost incredulous. "This thing's gone international. The U.S. Embassy's scrambling to get them out. They even issued an official travel advisory, warning Americans not to, well, let's just say engage in offensive acts in countries with strict laws. He gave a short laugh, shaking his head. She spent years chasing youth, chasing excitement, and now? She's got more attention than she could have ever dreamed of. I leaned back, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. I couldn't have scripted it better myself. I nodded. Fine. Let's do it. 2 weeks later, the U.S. Embassy had done its job, pulling every string they could to get Karen and her 2 companions out of that mess. When she stepped onto American soil again, she was free, but humiliated. I knew she'd come straight to the house and I was ready. She appeared at my door, dragging her suitcase behind her. Logan, she whispered, her voice cracking. I folded my arms. What did you think was going to happen? Her lip trembled. I made a mistake, but I still love you. A cold laugh escaped me. Love? You call that love? Her composure crumbled. She broke down completely, sobbing right there on my doorstep. Please, Logan, we can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can... I stepped back, gripping the edge of the door. You need therapy. I'm just fine. We're done, Karen. And with that, I slammed the door in her face. I knew exactly where she'd head next. But my lawyer had done his job well, but in the end, state laws were what they were. I walked away with my mother's house, my inheritance safe from division, but everything else was split evenly. Half of my assets gone. When I signed the final papers, I let out a sharp breath. Part of me couldn't help but think how much simpler it all would have been if we'd divorced under Maldivian law. A few days later, I ran into Karen outside the courthouse. She looked different, tired, worn down, maybe even a little regretful. But the second she saw me, her expression twisted. Without a word, she lunged. Gasps erupted from the crowd as she swung at me. A few bystanders rushed in, pulling her back before she could actually hurt me. I adjusted my jacket, my pulse steady, and met her wild, furious eyes. You just made this easier for me, I said flatly. The very next day, I filed for a restraining order, my final move against her. 3 weeks later, I stepped into the local dog shelter, breathing in that familiar mix of fur, disinfectant, and the faint scent of wet dog. The place was alive with sound, excited barking, claws scratching against tile, tails thumping against kennel doors. I made my choice quickly, 5 magnificent German shepherds. Each one had its own personality, but all of them were sharp, alert, and fiercely loyal. As the adoption paperwork was finalized, I reached down and scratched the head of the biggest one. What do you think, buddy? Ben only got 2, I got 5. Who's the better man? The dog wagged his tail enthusiastically. Yeah, I know, boy, I said with a smirk. I'm the better man. Once we were done, I loaded them into my SUV. There was a strange, quiet satisfaction in that moment. This was my life now. No more chasing after women, no more trying to hold together something that was already broken. Karen could cling to her youth with both hands if she wanted, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Back home, I opened the gate to my backyard, letting my new companions bound ahead of me, 5 eager shepherds, tails wagging, eyes bright with anticipation. I picked up a ball, rolling it between my fingers before launching it across the yard. Go get it, boys. They tore across the grass, barking with excitement. I stood there watching them, a genuine smile tugging at my lips for the first time in a long while. It was time to play fetch with my dogs, dear reader. And that was just fine with me.